death. We all worry about it, and yet it is life's one certainty that we will all die one day. And as we watch ourselves and our loved ones age, or in those rare moments of silence in our busy lives when we allow ourselves to think about it, we can't help but wonder, what happens after we die? Is there a soul that lives on after a physical death, and where does it travel to? Or is death the end? Death has worried humankind since the beginning of time, and because of that, there are countless theories as to what happens to us when we leave this earth. And yet, even today, with all the technology that's available to us, science still can't say for sure what happens when we die, or disprove religion's beliefs about it. But since these beliefs also change depending on what your religion is, we are left with a void when it comes to one of life's mysteries. In this video, we will talk about what several religions have to say about God and death, but we will also cover what those who don't believe in a higher power have to say on the subject. But let me make this perfectly clear. I am in no way judging or evaluating religions. And we'll start with Hinduism, which is the oldest existing religion. It is centered around reincarnation. They believe that when someone dies, their soul will be reborn in a different form. And that way, the physical body dies, but the soul remains and gets recycled until reaching its true nature, which can take many lifetimes. The goal is to move closer to Brahma, the Hindu god, each time they die. And they also believe that their next incarnation will depend on how they acted in their previous lives. We've all heard of karma, right? So when a loved one dies, they choose to cremate them because they believe it's the quickest way to release the soul from the body and help them reincarnate. Next, we have Buddhism, and Buddhism believes death is a natural part of the life cycle, or the samsara, that it leads to rebirth, when the spirit seeks out a new body and a new life. But while the spirit remains in this life cycle, it is hurting because it is being kept away from its ultimate state of being, the nirvana, which can only be attained when they release themselves from that cycle that keeps them bound to the illusion of the material world. They also believe in karma, the law of cause and effect, and how it influences everything, including how they live and how they die. It is very important for a Buddhist to prepare for death by living a good and kind life, by being true to themselves and caring about others, in order to achieve calm and control at the time of their death. Now let's talk about Taoism, which was born in China. It is both a philosophical school of thought and a religion. Taoism centers around the core concept of Tao, or the way, the energy within all things that is the source of all there is in nature and the universe. It is about balance, about living according to nature's rhythms and practicing virtues like compassion, humility, and simplicity. They are much more focused on what happens while living than what happens after they die. They focus on being aligned with the natural world, on their health, and on living a simple life with inner peace. And they simply believe that when someone dies, their spirit lives on in the Tao. Okay, we cannot talk about death without talking about ancient Egypt. It is by far the most death-obsessed culture that ever existed. They even made a book about it called the Book of the Dead, meant to guide the person's soul in the afterlife to find their way to the gods. Ancient Egyptians believed that life on this earth was just a transition stage followed by eternity. They didn't worry much about physical death because they knew it was a natural part of life. What they truly feared was what is called the second death, which is the death of the soul. They believed that when a person died, their heart was weighed on the scale to determine if they had lived a just life, if they had respected the gods and their families. If they were found just, their souls would then go to Osiris Chapel, where they would turn into gods and travel happily for eternity. If not, their hearts would be devoured and their souls would die forever. Next, we have Judaism, the world's oldest monotheistic religion. They believe in a God that revealed himself through ancient prophets and are guided by the Tanakh, the Jewish sacred text that includes the Torah that outlines laws for Jews to follow. For Jews, the soul is the self. The body is its vehicle, and death is merely the separation into two separate entities. Most Jews also believe that in the future, in a divinely perfect world to come, the soul will be restored to a rebuilt and revitalized body, so that body and soul will be together again as a living being when their Messiah comes. They believe in resurrection rather than reincarnation. It is the actions, not the beliefs, that determine a person's fate in the afterlife. In Judaism, people are buried and cremation is forbidden. And then there's Christianity. Christians believe that by their own actions, humans have forfeited immortality. That by abusing their freedom in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve not only sinned and fell from grace, but they also passed on their sin to their descendants. And the ultimate penalty for their sins is death, which became humans' universal fate. The main salvation came with the death of Jesus Christ, who died and suffered in humanity's place, for humanity's sins. Christians believe in resurrection and that at the return of Christ, God will administer divine judgment, with mercy and justice, leading to either eternal salvation or damnation. Peace, the assurance of forgiveness of their sins, and the confidence in the communion with God are the focus of the Christian journey towards death. Also, we have Muslims, and Muslims see life as temporary, followed by an eternal life once they die as their soul moves on to another world. They believe God has made this world as a test and a preparation ground for the afterlife. And on the day of resurrection, they will stand before God for judgment. And those who have pleased God and led a good life will be rewarded with heaven and life there for eternity. And those who disobeyed God's commands will be punished with hell. As death is seen as a necessary part of their journey to eternal afterlife with God, many Muslims see death as a gift from God, although they do not seek it because they believe it is their duty to take care of their good health. So suicide, euthanasia, and unjust murder as means of death are prohibited in Islam and considered major sins. Cremation is also forbidden and viewed as the desecration of the deceased. And then there's the atheists. And atheists believe there is no God and no life after death, and that death means people simply cease to exist. They have no beliefs because, simply put, beliefs aren't facts, so it makes no sense for them to live a certain way to please a God, because there is simply no evidence that such an entity exists. It doesn't mean, however, that they don't think about that. Like most people, they want to avoid any type of suffering for them and their loved ones once their time comes. But being an atheist also means that while they fear painful death, they don't fear the afterlife, or going to hell, or paying for their sins, or reincarnation for that matter, because they simply don't believe there is anything else after they die. Death is the end of it all. Now, many people believe that atheists and agnostics are pretty much the same thing, but they're actually not. The English biologist Thomas Henry Huxley coined the word agnostic and said it simply means that a man shall not say he knows or believes that which he has no scientific grounds for professing to know or believe. So of course that would include religion and the afterlife. Agnostics believe there is no way of knowing if God actually exists, and that there is no way of knowing if there is life after death, because they believe human reason is incapable of providing enough rational grounds to justify that it exists or that it doesn't exist. That it is unknown and unknowable. The thing with agnostics is it doesn't really matter to them. They focus on what they're able to prove, and that's probably why most of them are scientists. There is a quote by Seneca that says, "Death is the wish of some, the relief of many, and the end of all." And no matter what your beliefs are, there is no denying that death plays a very important part in life, one that we often think about and wonder about. So I would love to know, what are your beliefs? What do you think happens to us after we die?